Before we get into the review, here's something that's always perplexed me about Disney castles. Cinderella Castle, which is the landmark of the Magic Kingdom at Disney World, was built in 1971, 50 years ago and 21 years after the release of this movie. Meanwhile, Sleeping Beauty Castle, which is the landmark of Disneyland, was made 4 years before Sleeping Beauty. So that's kind of always perplexed me that the castle in this movie wasn't used for Disneyland, but rather Disney World. But whatever, that's just something that's always caught my attention. Hello everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. Welcome to the channel. This is my review for Cinderella, which came out in 1950, 71 years ago, based off the fairy tale of the same name, and is the first movie in Disney's Silver Age. The movie follows Cinderella, a young woman who lives with her stepmother and two stepsisters, and is pretty much their personal servant. Basically, a servant that they just don't have to pay, except with a room. What happened beforehand was that Cinderella's mother had passed away. Gee, what a surprise, a Disney princess movie where the mother dies off screen. So the father ends up marrying Lady Tremaine, but unfortunately the father dies soon after. Gee, what another surprise. So Lady Tremaine ends up using Cinderella as, like I said, a house servant, making her wear the rattiest clothes you can imagine, keeping her locked up in that house because she is jealous that Cinderella is more beautiful than her two daughters, which is an extremely petty reason to be a villain, but then again, it's no more petty than the last time we saw this play out. But then all of a sudden, the royal palace holds a ball and invites all the young women in the area to come on down, have a great night, but mainly it's there in an attempt for the king to try to find his son, the prince, a wife, because good lord, this man talks about nothing but wanting grandkids. So Cinderella ends up going to the ball herself. Out of all the women there, she's the only one that catches the prince's eye, and I think you know where the rest of the story goes. It's very simple and very straightforward. Maybe to a fault. So for the past 6 weeks, I've been stuck in Disney's package film era, an era of Disney animation that I'm not all that familiar with, even if I've seen segments of those movies on their own. And while I did enjoy the last two movies of that era, Melody Time and The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, I was thankful to be done with it, because this entire era felt like a chore to get through, honestly. There was some good stuff, but overall, it was just not all that fun to watch all these movies. So I was excited to jump into the Silver Age of Disney animation and get back to the traditional 3-act structure of a movie. Yeah, be careful what you wish for, because Cinderella, it's not really the best start to this new era. Now, this is one of those Disney movies that I saw a few times as a kid. Growing up, my parents did have a lot of VHS tapes, but they were mainly the movies from the Golden Age and Silver Age of Disney animation. The Renaissance Age was just brand new, and my parents, mainly my dad, wanted to expose me to the Disney movies that they watched growing up. So I didn't really get to see the movies of my generation as much as many other kids did. And when watching Cinderella, there was just something about it that didn't really click with me. I didn't dislike it, but I just never really got into it. It's one of those Disney movies that I watched as a kid and went, it's cool, I guess, but there's some much better ones that I could be watching. And it's been about 20 years since I last saw this movie from beginning to end, and rewatching it as an adult, I now have a full understanding of why this movie never really appealed to me as a kid. Now, I know some people out there are going to say, oh, because you're a guy and you're not supposed to like this kind of movie. And that might be a factor that plays into it, but I feel like gender be damned, this is just not a good movie on its own. I get what they were trying to do with this movie and the start of the Silver Age. They were trying to go back to basics. They tried to go back to what got them on the map in the first place, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. But this movie just doesn't hold a candle to that. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is another example of a Disney movie that shouldn't really appeal to my gender, but I really dug that movie. And the reason I really love Snow White is because it has a more interesting look to it. It's not afraid to get dark. The side characters are memorable, and it just has wonderful art direction, and the animation is just beautiful all around. Cinderella has some of those elements to it, but they're never to the same degree as with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That's not to say there isn't anything good in this movie, because there are a few things that I actually do like. One thing, I actually do like Cinderella somewhat. She's not that interesting of a character, and one of the biggest problems that a lot of these movies had back in the day, at least before the Renaissance, was that all the side characters and the villains are memorable, but the princess herself, and especially the prince, are really forgettable. And with Cinderella, I just didn't really find her to be that interesting, or even all that memorable, but you do have to give credit to her for being the most patient woman on the planet. Because when you watch the evil stepmother and the twin stepsisters take full advantage of Cinderella and just abuse her to no end, you have to give Cinderella props. Like, you should give her some sort of special award for being as patient as she is, because any other person in her place, if they heard nonstop, "Cinderella, Cinderella, bring up my breakfast," you just want to have to yell out, "Shut the hell up, I'm on my way up. Just sit your ass down and be patient." Now, speaking of that evil stepmother, Lady Tremaine is another big highlight of the movie. While not one of the best Disney villains out there in my opinion, what makes this character work better than she's probably written to be is the voice. The voice actress, Eleanor Audley, makes this character as sadistic and just cruel as she looks. Between the voice and just the way this character is designed and animated, makes this villain stand out a lot more than she probably should, because the writing is just very petty. I mean, you do have to admire this movie for having its villain be as evil as she is just by having control of this woman's life, but that's about it. There's nothing too much to this villain. It sounds like I'm kind of all over the place in talking about Lady Tremaine, but I'll just sum it up by saying I don't think the character is that interesting in terms of a writing perspective, but the way she's animated and the way Eleanor Audley voices her, there's a reason why she does stick out. And Eleanor Audley would later go on to voice Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty, which we'll get to in a couple of weeks. And she would also voice Madame Leota in the Haunted Mansion attractions. Not Haunted Mansion Holiday, just the regular old Haunted Mansion. So those are the only two elements that I like about the movie. Everything else I don't hate, but I certainly don't love or even like. The story is just kind of bare bones. It's very basic, and when I say it's very simple to a fault, I mean that in the sense that this could barely work as a feature film. It really makes me wonder, out of all the fairy tales that they could have turned into a feature for this new age of Disney animation, why Cinderella? I know there are many other film adaptations of Cinderella out there, but I feel like this particular story may have been better if it was a short, because there's definitely a lot of padding that goes on, mainly with the mice, and I'm just gonna say this right now, I don't like the mice in this movie. As a kid, I remember them being funny and somewhat amusing, but watching them as an adult, all I could think of was the minions from Despicable Me, and I can't stand the minions for the life of me, so watching these mice, the only thing I'll say is that they're probably more innocent and not as obnoxious as the minions, but even then, sometimes with their voices and in the few moments where you can't understand they're saying, very Minions-esque. The only thing that really sticks out about the mice, especially with Jack and Gus Gus, is this unfortunate freeze frame right here. This is a Disney review, so I'm not going to exactly say what that represents, but I think anybody with an adult mind can piece that together. Because it's been 20 years since I last saw Cinderella, the first time I ever noticed this is when I visited the Animation Academy at Disney's California Adventure. And unfortunately, that was one of the stills that they showcased in that building, and I just thought to myself, phrasing. Now, what about the songs? Well, there's only one, maybe two songs that really stick out to me. The first one is Bippity Boppity Boop, which comes from the Fairy Godmother. And the Fairy Godmother doesn't really appear that much. She's only in that one scene, but she is very charming and definitely the antithesis of what Lady Tremaine is. And the only other song that sticks out to me is A Dream is a Wish Your Heart Makes. And that's only because I've heard the instrumental version of it several times at the Disney parks. So that's the only reason it even sticks out to me. So I don't have much else to say about Cinderella. It's just not interesting. It's not awful. It's not even like bad per se. It's just, at best, it's okay. It's got some nice animation. I do like Cinderella and just how patient she is with everyone. I do like how evil Lady Tremaine can be, even if she's not one of the most well-written Disney villains. But everything else is just kind of lacking. There's a lot of padding. The side characters don't really do a whole lot and are kind of obnoxious. And it makes me wonder how that remake works. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, I didn't see the remake. I actually tried to do a Cinderella double feature. Once I finished this movie, I was gonna jump right into the remake on Disney Plus. Except it's not on there. And I could have sworn it was on there at one point because I remember adding it to my watch list. Which, brief side note, Disney should really put in a last chance option like HBO Max has. Because on HBO Max, I have a problem with them removing stuff that they themselves own. But at least they put it in a section to tell people, hey, this movie or show is leaving our platform. Watch it while you still can. And then with Disney Plus, no announcement whatsoever when something gets removed. So I wanted to watch the remake because everyone keeps telling me that it's one of the best of the live-action Disney remakes. Maybe one day I will, and I might have to dedicate a whole review to that just to see how I feel about it. But just the movie itself, I don't know. It's hard for me to recommend it. I'm just going to rate this for my own viewpoint. Don't waste your money at all. If you have young kids, especially if they're daughters, then they might like this. Because really, this movie was more designed for young kids, especially little girls. But I even hate saying that because it sounds sexist. Any kid that's older than 10 really doesn't need to be watching this at all. It's not going to grab their curiosity. It didn't grab my curiosity when I last saw it. And it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of bland. Not awful, not terrible, not even bad. It's just bland and not the best start to Disney's Silver Age. And there you go, that's my review for Cinderella. Now next week we're gonna jump ship into my favorite Disney movie from the Silver Age, Alice in Wonderland. If you've been a subscriber since 2019, or at the very least 2018, then you probably have seen me talk about this movie once. So I can't wait to talk about it again, but in more context. But now I want to know what you guys think about Cinderella. If you've seen it, what did you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there is only one. Hello everyone, I just want to say thank you all for watching my review for Cinderella. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on social media, whether that be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Go check out my Twitch channel and support me on Patreon. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.